We hadn't been able to get anywhere near Stonewood for years. So when you take him down this time, you take him down hard.
He's created a legend for himself. Only lasting thing about Jacob Stonewood would be his prison sentence.
Like the rest of the UK, much of the year, London is a genuinely cold city. So cold in fact that the entire colour palette of this British crime thriller is blue. Welcome to the Punch is the second directorial effort of Aaron Creevey, and stars James McAvoy, Mark Strong, and Andrea Riseborough. The narrative follows Detective Max Lewinsky as he aims to track down and arrest a ruthless criminal named Jacob Stonewood. What follows are essentially two revenge tales, one from the perspective of Max and the other from the perspective of Jacob. Intertwined into these two tales is a conspiracy involving the murder of a 22-year-old and Jacob's son. For the most part, the story is very simple, and much of the drive comes from finding out what is going on. While the film does initially have a good idea, it lacks any real substance, and fails to articulate what exactly it's trying to do. In other words, the plot becomes muddled and confused as it tries to develop a mysterious plot into what is essentially a generic crime thriller. What you see is what you get, and there isn't exactly a compelling reason to invest in what is going on. Max and Jacob are the focal highlights of the film, but they both feel rather hollow, which is a shame considering that there is such a great cast involved in the film. Many characters feel either pointless or underutilized, with the only real standout being Peter Mullen, who clearly seems to be having fun in his role. The major flaw the film has is the script. The dialogue is plain and rather patchy, and there isn't much flow given to conversations, and for the most part it feels tiresome and rehashed. And again, this is disappointing considering the slick visual style and direction. The neo-noir cinematography of Ed Wilde greatly enhances the mood of the film, as there is a clear noir inspiration embedded within the style. This helps the film's emotional impact, that to a relative extent is achieved rather well. I strangely found myself rooting for Max, despite his character being underdeveloped, mostly because of the sense of urgency and lack of trust that's typically conventional to noir. The lack of colour and suppressed tone conveys a world of corrupt individuals, and it's interesting how the film reverses protagonist-antagonist roles. While the pacing is slowly inconsistent, there are plenty of tense moments throughout, with one especially intense shootout at a nightclub that, as a gamer, reminds me very much of Max Payne. The lack of a soundtrack adds to the heart-pounding intensity of certain scenes as characters wait silently for a perfectly timed kill, and the slow build generated from these scenes does effectively pick up the rather weak story. In addition, one scene in a character's grandmother's house sparks a particularly surreal setup that oddly doesn't seem out of place. In conclusion, the film is basically style over substance. The core of the film's writing problem is the fact that it takes itself too seriously, and it doesn't exactly know what it's doing half the time. On paper, the concept sounds really interesting, but the execution is unfortunately flawed due to a debilitated script. It's a true shame that so many great actors are wasted, as they do the best they can with the material they've been given. In reality, even despite some really great tension, the film ultimately lacks any real long-term punch.